viewing China as, a different civilization, and that has to be fought against. And when you talk of China, and that this is where we will also end up to the BRICS. But before going there, let us also look at what other leaders, notably Emmanuel Macron, mentioned in 2017 during the G20 meeting. He said, when countries have 7 to 8 children per woman, you will not stabilize anything. That was when he was referring to the demography of Africa. And he continues, when you have 7, 8, 9 children per woman, is it is it each woman's choice? So he would not even consider that women could choose to bear 7, 8, or more, because in Western society, the demography has been cut down in such a way that there has been for long this crystallization on other women's fertility. And this was the case also of the Kissinger report, that was a whole government policy that was declassified recently, which noticed that there was a tendency toward international disorders and violence when the population is greater than available resources. And that's why that policy will try to reduce the global population. It's not propaganda, it is not conspiracy theory. It is a formal state government that impacts policies that are still implemented even nowadays. So, although we have seen Trump cutting down US aid, but the main nucleus, the core of the policy is still implemented in different policies all over the world. And there are countries that were targeted because of their population, such as Nigeria, Mexico, and many others. But of course, no European country was targeted because it's the natality of the other countries that is perceived as a problem. And this has been also manifested in Israel with the undesired or non-consented sterilization of Ethiopian women, or those who are considered as beta Jews, beta Israelites, were transported to Israel and then given contraceptives because, blackness is a problem. They want to consider to build a white Israel nation, and, having black babies was a problem. And, Ethiopians ended up being more, making more babies, and this was a problem. And that's why the Depo-Provera prescriptions was given to them, and without their consent, and the government itself recognized these policies. So we would continue also with Giorgia Meloni, who observed that there was a declining birth rate, which has huge implication for social stability on European nations. And we would have continued also with, Finland's minister, who proposed to fund abortions in Africa as climate policy. So you would understand that there has been, a big frustration in Europe with regards to African fertility. And this is not conspiracy theory again, because whenever science wants to touch to those aspects, they would say, oh, no, no, these are conspiracy theory. No, we have formal policies, we have direct impacts, and this has to be addressed. And that's why we think that this has strengthened the birth of organizations such as the BRICS, and also the Sahel states recently in Africa. So that's why Africans started interrogating population and security framing, and have also started to leverage South-South platforms without new hierarchies, and center consent, data integrity, and reparations in policy. Of course, not all African countries are using the same strategies, but there is a growing awareness towards these policies. So what we can understand from these codes and these policies we have gone through is that there is a racialized demography which persists in policy design, and we that makes us that leads us to follow the money and the law, because all these were taken as if they were different from racial issues, but we understand that they are all connected. There is no business without talking about spirituality, without talking about economy, without talking about the rest of society. So this leads to African agency that requires historical clarity. We just don't need to see as if the world started today. All this is interlinked. Their fear, the fear of the Europeans, when you dig down, you will also see that it was the same fear that Rome had towards what they were terming as barbarians, that was made up of Britons and of the Franks, the Goths, and Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and that will become what we call today the West. The West were the one considered as barbarians and that were feared as savages by Rome. And now the same West replicate what was done to them by Rome. So when we understand history, we understand that it is not random. All this is interconnected, and we might go back also to see how Greece had the same dynamic towards Rome, and then how also Egypt had the same dynamic towards, the Jews or towards the Abrahamic believers in general. So there is kind of cycles that repeats when we interrogate history, and that is where we need to see that all these are interconnected. There is nothing random, and that the BRICS itself and its offshoots, such as the Alliance of Sahel States, are also coming within these dynamics, and we might learn now how not to replicate the same injustice where the Hegel's cycle of master slave repeats itself. How can we build a better world? But before going to that, what we can understand is that Dubois was preaching for a solidaristic world, while Pearson was awakening the fear of Europeans to fight or to better protect themselves against the rest of the world. And that is what led to what we observe today in terms of financial, political, economic organizations with entities such as the BRICS. Now, what do we see? What is happening on the field in concrete life to tell us that, okay, these organizations can bring change? We can see that there are a growing membership. For instance, in 2025, from the original five, the BRICS have welcomed new members such as Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE, Indonesia. So if something was not working well, we wouldn't see people joining in. But the fact that they are joining means that there is something growing, there is something positive happening, and which might serve as a balance to the traditional UN system that we know. We also saw in 2000, since 2009, the launching of the New Development Bank, and also since 2023, invitation to expand, which also invited countries, new countries, although Saudi Arabia and Argentina have not yet formally joined. But we can see that there is a growing trend towards this. And it is the same thing with the Alliance of Sahel States. We have seen from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, we heard that Chad is making its bid to also join the organization. And we also saw countries such as Togo being more and more sympathetic to their cause. So there is a way to believe that there is something happening. And also, we can see the currency dynamics. While in the past we had the primacy or the dominance of the American dollar, nowadays the RMB, the Chinese yuan, is making progress. We might not call it exponential, but at least gradual progress towards imposing itself as one of the currencies to challenge the old system, which has been built, by the Bretton Woods institutions, such as the World Bank and the World Monetary Fund, and which we all, at least those who are living in Africa, know the side effects in terms of privatization, in terms of public expenditures that have been reduced, and mostly the fact that big organizations have been you know taking the wealth and just exporting them to Western countries, and while having very huge national domestic products, but in reality owned by multinationals. And all these have been facilitated, we all know, by the Bretton Woods institutions. So when we look at the financial dynamics nowadays, we tend to think that there is something happening. We don't. I don't argue that the UN will always is the panacea, is the solution for all developing nations. But at least there is something new, different, and hopefully more positive than the previous system. So there are 105 active projects by end of 2024, more than 35 billion financing stemming from the new development bank that is implemented by the BRICS. Loans and advances are skyrocketing to almost 20 billion on December 31st, 2024. And we have also seen a huge investment in South Africa for water projects, and all coming from the new development bank. And we don't need to assert more to show that China's investment has been important the recent decades in Africa. So all these tend to be as a response to the call made by Dubois, calling for the solidarity among the former colonized nations. Um, and definitely, we have also the Sahel States Alliance, that which is a confederation that become a confederation in 2024. From a simple alliance, a military alliance, it became a confederation. And you might feel that their ambition is to mutualize and homogenize their countries into one stronger entity, and probably achieve the Pan-Africanist dream that Marcus Garvey, Dubois, and all the forefathers of Pan-Africanism had in mind, such as Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, which is obviously different from what we are seeing nowadays in terms of AU, African Union, which is funded totally by the West, or greatly funded by the West and China. They want to rely on their gold, rely on their internal resources, and which also was effective when they exited ECOWAS, the West African Economic Organization, that was implemented in 2025, despite the threats from France, their former colonizer, because they want sovereignty, and they didn't see to the threats coming from different nations, and sanctions coming also from their neighboring ECOWAS countries. They stood firm, and until today, they are going towards, creating a new bank, and also having their currency, and having mutualizing their military force to better resist foreign interventions. And they have been very solid, not only against the West, but we have seen recently in Niger against China, for instance, one company that was mistreating people from Niger, they have to resist. So all these calls to see that there is a kind of manifestation towards more sovereignty, and also a reception of the call made 2 or 3 centuries before by forefathers of Pan-Africanism, and also that falls in line with the Bandung Conference spirit, and also the current day BRICS. With its transformation, as we can see, Russia, which was of the white bloc, which is now fighting the same bloc that it had supported in the past, because probably they understood, some dynamics that were not, helping their presence, and were not helping their ideology from their roots, which was to fight against, colonialism, imperialism. So basically, we can see different arenas, different channels of BRICS that tend to strengthen relationship between former colonized nations, and this is manifested in the case of the Sahel states with a biometric passport, a common biometric passport of all these nations, and which receive the support of some nations, although not formally recognized, but they are, imposing it. They are presenting it as the main identity through which their nationals should be welcome in other countries, notably in Senegal and the rest of the world. They are working towards it, um, because they understood union makes stronger. So these are some of the aspects we can observe these nations. On the other side, on the side of the BRICS, we have Saudi Arabia, which is at the door. We are not yet sure, probably also because of the influence of the United States of Saudi Arabia, but it's already good that it already presented its interest towards the BRICS, meaning that they can even shatter one of the most traditional and one of the strongest supporters of, the Western led ideologies with regards to their plans in the Middle East and the rest of the world. So if Saudi Arabia can have this interest towards the BRICS, it shows that they are changing the arena, changing the world, and but we don't know how far it can go and what is behind all of this. Um, but what we can see is that there are obvious implications for African nations. Notably, they need to negotiate inside BRICS, and definitely outside also, not taking, for granted that, okay, it's because BRICS, we are changing masters from the West to the BRICS, notably to China. And then, no, it is to negotiate, to have more agency while being mindful of the past. We believe that history tells a lot, and nothing should be taken for granted when dealing with other nations. Build operationality across finance security standards, and focus on local currency rails and trade facilitation. And for someone like me, coming from Cameroon originally, I understand it better, because even the currency currently that is used in Cameroon and 14 other of African nations come from France, and it's even the paper money is made in France, the currency, showing the link, the colonial link. And that's why the Sahel states seem to orient other nations towards creating their local currency and living and experiencing their sovereignty from within, while also building partnerships with other like-minded nations. So I want to just I'm moving towards the end. I am probably towards the end of my time. I don't know how many minutes I want to I still have, but I want to mention this. We are not being only taking the BRICS or the Sahel states as solution to everything, that they don't have any problem. Definitely, one of the risks that that African nations have to manage is notably China's debt diplomacy, which is obvious, and also demographic transfer without check. We can see millions of Chinese settling in Africa without also a counterpart in for Africans in China. So these are aspects that have to be addressed. Also, we might also interrogate Russia's intervention support, which is also sometimes conditioned by a lot of a lot of resources in response or in exchange. In Mali, we can see that they are present, the African Corps of the former Wagner, which is presented as a private militia, but definitely linked to Russian government. They are doing a great job towards helping these nations, but it's not for free. It was not meant to be free, but sometimes we might see that the bill is very high, and so African nations should be wary, should be aware of the fact that the BRICS might be also an organizations where the leading powers still come and dictate their policies and drain more interest for their nations. But we might not also forget that it is a lever. It is something useful at this current stage when at least they need more freedom from countries such as France, still dominating, oppressing many nations till the level of using the only colonial currency in the whole world. Like even countries such as Vietnam that were subjected to colonialism have their currencies. Almost all African countries have their currency, but it's only these 14 nations that don't have them, meaning that there is still much to be done, and that's where we might think that the BRICS can be a solution, at least to move towards more freedom, but not total sovereignty, because there is still the debt trap, there is still the dependency towards technology and military reinforcement from Russia, but also new nations such as Turkey and definitely the Gulf states, which can be also proxies, which can act as proxies to the United States, to France, to Great Britain, to the old colonizers. So nothing is won yet. There is much to be done, but at least we think that it is hard time we start addressing, discussing these aspects so that African nations can start asserting their sovereignty. They can start building something new and understanding that nothing is disconnected. There is no business connected to demography, connected to religion, connected to politics. All is interconnected, and that history tells a lot about the future. So this is a little bit what I can summarize if I were to give some takeaways about my presentation. BRICS is leverage, but not a panacea. Agency rises when African states set terms and mostly when they unite. And resilience is Afro-Asiatic and multipolar by design. At least when we go to the forefathers of, this solidarity between Asia and Africa, because they have something in common, and which is, the oppression. China went through the 100th century of humiliation through what we know, first Opium War, second Opium War, and also the boxers' repression, and what we still see today, the demonization permanently in the media, in academia, everywhere. And definitely, Kyron Skinner's statement is just one of the most obvious, but you don't need to go far. Everything will tell you. But in reality, the world that we think we need to build is the one where nations can rely on their ancestry, but also on their resources. Africa has resources, Africa has roots, and it can count on it to build its sovereignty. And in opposition, most of the nations that have relied on imperialism, on domination, on slavery, and its corollaries have don't have all those aspects in terms of roots, and also in terms of resources. And this is where Africa sets the ground for a better future. And hopefully, with the contribution of all of us, we can make the future better. And hopefully, will make it not only for Africa, but for the rest of humanity, a better world for everyone to live. So this is a little bit what I prepared, and the sources I used are listed here, notably the source of Black Fall from Dubois, National Life and Character from Charles Henry Pearson. And I will be happy to welcome your questions, remarks, and objections. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Richard, for a wonderful presentation. We thank you for how you've been able to expose us to a lot of things that is happening in the international politics. I want to call it international relations. Those days in school, and during my undergraduates, they were always there's a saying that if you want peace, prepare for war. I think it's a saying, Dr. Richard, in international relations. So, and I think it's part of what is going on right now, which is a battle for unipolar world and multipolar world, which you have dissected for us. We thank you so much. You have really exposed us to those theoretical baseline by Dubois and other theories that you have used. A wonderful presentation. You've also showed us how the frustrations in Europe right now due to the reuniting of especially the Francophone world in Africa, how they are coming together. They are causing confusion for the Europeans, and they don't know what to do next. And you've really encouraged us that also BRICS. The speaker has always also reminded us about the BRICS nations, which is an international governmental organization for emerging economies, which was formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's a wonderful presentation. So we have a lot, I know many people have a lot of questions concerning if we are going to align with the BRICS nations, or we should continue to be under the Western dominated power. We don't know. So I know that some of us here, some of the participants, you may have some questions. Please, don't fail to ask your questions. You are free now. You can ask your question. If you have any questions concerning what our presenter has presented, he has done justice to the job. So the floor is open for questions. So, Dr. Richard, I just want to ask a question before others. I don't
Sure.
know. Okay. Um, do you think that joining the BRICS, what the BRICS are doing right now, do you think it can really create a multipolar world? Do you see the Western nations agreeing to a multipolar world?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abram. Definitely, this is an interesting question that would come to anyone when, uh, attending this event, this conference. There are two questions. Is the BRICS, are the BRICS, are the Western nations agreeing with the BRICS? Definitely no. If they had agreed from start, they wouldn't have agreed even for any nations to gain its sovereignty. It was through resistance and through resilience that former colonized nations became independent, or relatively independent, for the case of francophone countries, at least, where I am more acquainted with. So it is not a matter of them agreeing. They will never agree because the master will always be want to stay master forever and ever, and that is literally what Dubois was explaining in his statement that I read recently. So the point is, just as you also clearly pointed out, it is a matter of resistance and strength, to resist to power. And, before Rome fell down, those they call barbarians didn't allow it to lead. It wasn't through the goodwill of Rome that France, Britain emerged as nations. Those countries were looters. They were coming, of course, it was as today, there are some of them who took the nationality, the Roman nationality, and were working the administration, but they were working together, and some were coming to loot and disappear. So it's pretty much the same history that repeats itself. And then one day they decided, through the Hunnic attacks, notably the Huns are one of the populations of European descent, coming from Eurasian steppes, that came and attacked Rome, and that's how Rome fell down. And so it is the same thing nowadays. European countries will never allow themselves to be overthrown, because it's pretty much their existential, it's an existential issue. Without the resources in the colonies, former colonies, they will not exist. The Great Britain will not exist, France will not exist. So the only solution is just to fight them back. And this is what the Sahel states understood. It's not us who are in the academia, we have to fight academically. Those who are military have to fight militarily. Those who are in the domain of arts have to fight artistically. So all sectors, the main point is that we have to be aware that it's not a joke. It's an existential fight, and which, of course, also is addressed within BRICS itself. As the second question is, is BRICS itself enough to guarantee this freedom? Definitely, China itself is building the Belt and Road initiative, that channel is not for the sole advantage of the developed nations or of Africa. So it's also about interest. So at least we know that the first enemy to Africa now is the West. And definitely, if China comes back to better terms, we can better negotiate. But otherwise, it will be also fought. Definitely, the future generation will understand that there is something to do there. So, in one word, I would say they will never agree, and it's obvious they will never agree, and it's not about them agreeing or not. It's just about us becoming sovereign, and that will involve resisting militarily, academically, artistically, spiritually, and at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that beautiful man.
Thank
I'm just in, I'm just really grateful for the kind of insights you've shared so far. Thank you very much, Richard. I'll read a question in the comment. Yeah, there is in the chat. There is a question by Iwajesu Okewumi, and it says, "Would African states also not become subsumed under the BRICS? How much voice would you say Africa has?" I imagine that's what the writer was getting at. And I'll add to that, it looks to me like Africa can easily become pawns in global politics, considering that most of those we are dealing with are stronger economically and in fact, in terms of military strength, they're way ahead of many of African nations. So, what exactly, like, to just stress to stress that question? Um, do you think that Africans are really partners or they are pawns in this in global politics?
Thank you so much. Yeah, in global politics, definitely, if it depends what we call now global. Are we talking of global politics made up of the World Trade Organization or of the Beijing Organization? The Beijing consensus. So that is where now the global has become already blurred. Because the traditional global world that we knew was the UN and and the Bretton Woods institutions. But nowadays we have this challenge. But regardless in terms of UN or BRICS, Africa still is occupying the dominated stage, or we are at the back of the stages. That's obvious. But the problem is that we are building something. We are building our sovereignty, and we are not alone. We have forefathers who have thought, and that's why my theoretical framework is built on Dubois. But also, the colonizers have their forefathers, who is Charles Henry Pearson. So Henry Pearson theorized that those people are rising. Be prepared, because those we used to take as our slaves are becoming our masters. And on the other side, Dubois was telling Africans, get together with the Asians. You have the same blood, not because, genetically we have the same blood per se, or I don't know, biologically, all humans, we are all of the same species. But I think Dubois was stressing this solidarity because of the oppression. The same way China was oppressed by Western powers, be it Great Britain, France, and even Russia, is the same way Africa has been oppressed. Maybe the oppression of Africa has been by Europe, or has been more violent, but at the end of the day, we share the same fate. So my understanding is that BRICS can be a better option at the moment, just because we have already been in the union with Western countries, like without our will. For instance, African French colonies contributed to participate in World War One and World War Two uh, on the side of France without our will, like our forefathers went there. So we have been allies for long. And what has this produced to us? It is despise, it is oppression until today. That's why it is hard time at least that we change strategies. So it is definitely not the option, I mean, not the solution, because France and Russia are for their interest, Saudi Arabia and the like, even, other new partners such as Brazil. But at least we might say that it is one ladder towards sovereignty, because at the same time, we don't have an option. We don't have yet the strength, and you noticed it well. We don't have the strength to resist them at the same stage. We need at least some support, because this is how strength is built. It's towards generation. And this is also, again, how barbarian nations, which are called nowadays France, UK, these were the barbarian nations, if you read history. And they are the one who have destroyed Rome in such a way that Latin have disappeared. We only use German, French, and the like. And these were the language that were considered the language of the savages in the past. And I am just quoting so that we don't consider, and there are many history books that teach about it. So the same way, African nations nowadays, which are considered as the oppressed, the prawns, as you say, will rise definitely, and will also dictate their way if they unite. And this is what we are trying to call this unity and this awareness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, presenter. Thank you, Dr. Richard. I think we have another hands up that wants to ask question. There's no name. I'm going to unmute. I'm seeing AA. AA. You can ask your question now, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abraham, and thank you very much, Dr. Richard, for this thought-provoking. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the thought-provoking presentation. I'm really happy I participated in this webinar. My question, I think I just have one question which has many parts, and then an opinion at the end that I would like to seek your own opinion on. I will make a statement and I will seek your own opinion on that. And my question is, do you think that what we are doing currently, the proportion of what we are doing currently will help us to get to where we are going? Or do we keep doing the little we are doing, hoping that something great or good will come out of it? That's it. Because why I'm asking this is, from your presentation, it is easier for me to travel in the 50 states in America than in the 54 states in Africa. It's easier for me to get up in the morning and travel from the north of America to the south of America. But it's very difficult for me to travel as a Nigerian to South Africa. So that brings close to what you said, that the Asians are closer to us Africans than we ourselves. What is that doing to our own solidarity as Africans? Also recently, the president of Nigeria just signed a treaty with Bill Gates to begin importing the GMOs into Nigeria. And I'm bringing this up because of the demography that you presented. And in previous years, I can't remember, 5 years or 6 years ago, the wife of Bill Gates, their foundation, introduced contraceptives in Nigeria when the women were asking for help. She preferred to introduce contraceptives instead of providing them with help. So I am bringing all these things up to ask, is what we are doing as Africans proportionate enough to the magnitude of the problems we'll have at hand? That's my question. And then my statement, which I'm looking for your opinion, is in a forum like this, a few years ago, someone made an informal statement that Africans will never rise simply because we don't have the cruelty of heart to do what the West has done to be where they are today. We don't have the heart. If we are told what the West did to be where they are today, we Africans, we don't have the heart to do it. And sometimes it begins to sound as if it is true, because when you look around and see or hear what is going on, you are like, these people have lost their humanity. Do we need to lose our humanity in order to get to where the West is today? So that's a statement that I'm looking for your own opinion from your own research. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too. These are very thought-provoking questions. And your first question with regards to, are Africans doing enough to reach to this, to our sovereignty? Aren't we repeating the same mistake and to remain in the same place? Um, you know, yeah, on the first perspective, you might be right. It is the same thing. What I'm doing, it is what Lumumba did, it is what Thomas Sankara did, and it's what Malcolm X did, it's what Martin Luther King did, and all of them had one thing in common. They were all killed, and most often by fellow Africans or with their collaboration. So in one stage, you might think that we are not moving. But if you want to understand that we are moving, don't look at yourself. Actually, look at the other. Because if you look at yourself, they say the earth revolves around itself, but we don't see it. But for you to understand that you are moving, look what is around you. So what is around us is to look at the eyes of the Europeans. I live in Canada. I've been in the West for almost 10 years or more, and I can see that, there is more and more aggressivity. There is more and more awareness that, you know, Africans are gaining more freedom, more sovereignty. And this is even at the personal stage. I don't need, when you look at their policy, we saw what Macron was saying. It's almost the same what Trump is saying. The whole world is telling that Africa is changing, is getting more freedom. And we can see their economy declining because we are rising. So it might not be the pace we want. It might not be as fast as we want because we are kind of living in two consciousness. We see what other people have achieved, and we see what we still have to do. But we should never forget that themselves to reach this stage, it took them centuries. The Huns, it took them almost 4 centuries to overthrow the Romans. And the West took the primacy of the world around the 14th century. Before that, it was China. And they just reigned for 4 centuries, and now they are already declining. The downfall. We have many, so we can observe it. So my conviction is that we are not fast as we want, but we are moving ahead. It's going at my personal level. I can feel it. I can see it. We are no longer what our parents were. We can now understand the system from within, and we can see that there is no superiority at all. All those mythologies that were built on Hollywood and Bollywood and the like have been destroyed overnight. So we are moving ahead, but maybe not at the same pace we want. Um, Obstacles exist, and it doesn't. And your question about African, are we? Is the enemy not from within? I think this is your question. If I paraphrase it, definitely it's not just because people are Africans or they are blacks that they will be fighting injustice. Even during the creation of the African Union, there were two trends: the Casablanca uh, 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 trend and the Monrovia trend. The Casablanca was overthrown by the Monrovia that created the Organization of African Union. And the Casablanca had more strength, more, the ambition was real African unity based on African resources. The Monrovia was mostly dominated by a certain Western trend and funding, and also spiritual organizations such as the Freemasonry and the church and many other organizations. And that is where the Casablanca was different. And because they have taken, the African Union today, that's why some African nations still serve the same interests, because they don't serve, like the AU, we have never seen them in serious matters about Africans, how they were chased in Ukraine and many other aspects. We haven't heard the African Union standing for Africans as we see the NATO standing for Europeans, for instance, or we just recently saw how Trump rescued from genocide, Africans, Europeans in South Africa. So these are examples. Why does the African Union doesn't act the same way? It is because, they are some governments are just black, uh, but actually it is just masks to go to what is his name, Franz Fanon. People can be in black skin but yellow white mask. So we need to understand that these are realities. It is difficult for Africans to circulate within Africa because those countries are not sovereign. It tells to the reality that even our borders are still under colonial rule, under colonial control. And that's what the Alliance of Sahel States are trying to break. You don't need any visa anymore between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. In the past, they had these boundaries. If you take the currency, although it is the franc CFA of Cameroon, you cannot use it in Senegal. Why? While they are all made in France, because all these are still under colonial control. And that's why scholars such as Anibal Quijano uses the concept of coloniality of power, meaning that colonialism never ended. It is just a mindset. Europeans are still, making improving their system to gain more control and more domination. And it is the same thing China is doing also. So we need to understand that, the BRICS might not be the solution as we want. We hoped it could be, but at least it's one stage towards sovereignty. But just don't be surprised, because all those organizations, all those entities are still developed for the interests of foreign nations and developed also by foreign nations. And so long as we don't have our indigenous systems, we will not go ahead. But will Africa never rise? I don't think so. We have to be as wicked as them? No. Why? Because we led the world. If you think of Egypt, think of Nubia. Sheikh Anta Diop wrote about the African origin of civilization. Africa led the world, the whole world. He was using the term African imperialism. At that time, Africa was leading the world when all these nations were in the Ice Age, in the Bronze Age. So we were not wicked. So Africans were not wicked to oppress. They are the one who came with a system that is built on wickedness to lead. Why? Because they are in barrenness. We saw demographically, they don't make uh, enough babies, and that's why they fight those who make more. They don't have enough resources. That's why they fight those who have more. And we are endowed by nature. We didn't, not because we are superior, but nature chose it like that. We have more demography and more resources. We just need to protect it. And that's why military force is also useful because we are facing civilization that only listen to the language of resistance. They respect better now Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, not because they said something different. It's just because they use military violence to resist them. And this is where many African nations have not understood. We cannot reason the West. We cannot reason even China. We just need more military power to resist and protect what we already have, what they covered from us. That's what I would understand. So we don't need to be wicked because we were already as good as we are today, and we led the world with wisdom, with the law of Mahat, with its equivalent in Ubuntu and the like in different African cultures. And so we can still reenact it and lead the world, not with violence, not with hypocrisy, not with covetousness, but with our real natural wealth and wisdom. That is my conviction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Richard. We have one question from Dr. Kasongo, and I'm sorry, we want to announce that this may be our last question because we intend ending this webinar by 5:30. So please, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Kasongo to ask his question. Dr. Kasongo, please, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to ask my question. My question is more on the theory, yeah, because and particularly on the question of Russia, because reading the Dubois color line neighbors, he mentioned colored people of China and so on and so forth. So the question of Russia is very interesting to me because Russia has got a part in Asia and a part in Europe, and sometimes people refer to Russia to Russians as the other white. Okay, the other white. Sometimes some scholars refer to them to that. So my question is that. Could we potentially apply Dubois' concepts or theory to Russia? What do you think if we could potentially apply that? Because Russia is got that kind of specificities, and also in light of the fact that some scholars are arguing, that we need to get out of those, binary thinking like black and white. Sometimes theories have to be flexible when we are applying them. So I just wanted to hear from you if you think that that theory could be applied to Russia or in general, or that's my question. Sorry to be long. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mukile. Your question is very pertinent because it has two layers. When we go in terms of colorism, your question is pertinent in the sense that Russia is a pale white nation, but is fighting Western nations, but what we need to understand is that Dubois uses the term not only in terms of color, although he uses the term color line, but in terms he uses also metaphorically in terms of oppression. And let us not forget that Russia is of a Slavic culture, and the term Slav comes from the fact that Russians were enslaved by other Europeans. So Russians have developed from their ancestry a mindset of resistance centuries ago against the rest. And, the new developing barbarian nations that came and resisted Rome developed themselves and created this concept of whiteness, putting Russia outside of it. Although we can see in 1905, when Russia was fighting Japan, it was considered the white. It was the white nation fighting the barbarian Asians. They were talking of the yellow peril, But after that, Russia understood that they have more in common with the rest of the world, and then Japan went west, as we can see nowadays. So that is where international politics also shift. So we are not surprised that some African nations nowadays, and we don't need to hide it, some nations wanted to aggress, you know, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger with the order of France, and so these are black nations. So this is where Dubois' concept doesn't only apply with regards to color, but also the symbolic um, um, image of, blackness as the symbol of the resistant. So now Russia can be considered also in terms of blackness, although being pale white. So, that's where we can still see a solidarity towards Africa coming from Russia, while Japan, which was considered the peril by the West in the 19th and early 20th century, is now in the Western Bloc. And nowadays we also see many African nations who are siding by the West to fight the rest of Africa. And these, if Dubois has to wake up, he would just consider them part of the other side of the color line, which is, so blackness is not the only criteria to resist. We just consider this whiteness as just injustice. And that's why also when we read Franklin, when he was considering even French people, for him, the only white in Europe were the British. The Germans were considered blacks, and talk less of Italians. And so this concept of whiteness has changed along the time. But I think intellectually, Dubois was mostly using it with regards to the oppressors. You can be black, but if you are working for the oppressor, you would still be considered part of the color line, the white color line. So that's my understanding of Dubois, but maybe there are other scholars who want to complete it, but this is how I understand it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Richard, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you for everything. I hope we are all we are all informed, well informed now about the present trend in the world, in international politics. So when we hear about the Sahel State, the Association of Sahel States, now we know what they are up to. And when we hear about BRICS, we know what they are up to. We thank you so much, Dr. Richard, and want to say whenever we call on you again, you try and also honor our invitation. Thank you so much. Now I want to hand over the mic to Dr. Joseph, who will conclude the program for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Abraham, for moderating this session so beautifully. And again, I would like to thank everyone who has made out time to be here today. I think, my mind won't let me rest if I don't ask this question. So maybe you can just respond in like 2-3 sentences. I'm sort of like, this might be obvious to some of us, but I would like you to just speak about the pragmatics of participating in the emancipation of Africa as academics. Like, what kind of research should we be doing? In what ways can we contribute? I don't know if you can just say in 2-3 sentences. Richard, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Joseph. Definitely, this involves the contribution of all of us. The pragmatics we don't have a specific guideline, but we have forefathers. We have people, when we read them, we understand, from Park, uh, going to Dubois, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. whatever we do in academics, as academics, we can contribute, even if we are studying classical arts. You know, when we study Greeks and Greek mythology, the main point is just to be aware that we are at war. This is what Chinwezu, and I'm very influenced by Chinwezu, the Nigerian scholar, when he was talking about, you know, Africa being facing a racial war. By and when you go back, you would understand that this has been throughout centuries since Africa lost its imperialism over the world, but not the same type of imperialism as what we are seeing nowadays. You know, when people, you know, there is imperialism of barrenness because people don't have and they want to have a certain stage. You know, they don't have currency, they don't have the wealth to support their consumption, but they want to be powerful. But Africa had everything and then could feed the rest of the world. So at that time, we had this capacity, but nowadays, people have to be aware of that. So when we are aware, regardless of what we study or teach, there will be a difference. We don't need to be at war physically as they are, but at least when we are aware that people of high rank, such as Macron, Trump, and the like, are all guided by racist views, and that we also need to replicate, everybody can bring his contribution. I'm not at the level of giving a guideline yet, but I can read. I myself, I have, you know, I'm influenced by people, contemporary people such as Chinwezu or you know, the late scholar, a Kenyan scholar who just left us. So we have them where we can read how they did. They worked in academia and they contributed, and we can do the same regardless of what we do in our respective areas. There is no area where an African can touch and cannot prosper. And we have this endowment to be the best when we focus, when we bring our contribution. So this is what I can say for now. Unfortunately, I don't have a guideline for now. I'm also reading from these forefathers and from these scholars who have come before us, and that's what I can say. Yeah, yeah, Guji, yeah, yeah. Thank you for his name, and these are people we look, we try to learn from, and they are influencing us. And even if they are on the other world, we can still feel their presence, and I think this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What an excellent response, I must say. And I think for me, the big takeaway is just that awareness, you know, having that awareness that we're at war. Like it will influence everything, almost everything, how you approach everything, understanding how you're positioned within the globe. It will change a lot about the kind of work you do and how you approach it. So thanks once again, Dr. Inyelade. I don't know if I'm getting the pronunciation.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for being so generous with your time and knowledge. And we look forward to collaborating or having you again in the future. So on that note, I would like to thank you all for attending this month's webinar. And I want to also notify you that ARN has a WhatsApp, a WhatsApp group. Let's see if we can have the link to join in the chat. So yeah, so you can join our WhatsApp group using the link that I've just posted. Yeah, I see that our admin has also posted it. So you can join us. And next month, we'll be having our annual general meeting. So feel free to attend that as well. And you know, you can be a bit more committed as a member. Once you join the group, you'd understand how you can become a member of ARN. Then in November, I think November will be the month that we wrap up our webinars for this year. We'll be having Professor Salim Badat, who is the former Vice Chancellor of Rhodes University in Grahamstown, a town that has been renamed Makanda in South Africa. So we'll be having him, and I think he was also an administrator of the Mellon Foundation grant at some point. I'm not sure if he's still active with that, but the the webinar promises to be very insightful, and he will be speaking on a topic around also, Africa, like being an African and researching. So please watch out for the poster for that webinar, the November one. And before then, please do not forget that we'll be having our AGM in October. That details about that will be communicated on the WhatsApp group. So thank you all, and see you next month at the AGM and also in November at the webinar to be presented by Professor Salim Badat. On that note, have a blessed evening.